All right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation. If you have not had the chance to check out our first book, 13-Step Guide to Success, it is available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback varieties. If you're going through some hard times, you don't have to go alone. Please phone a friend and chat it out. If you don't want to talk to a friend because you're embarrassed or don't want to feel a burden to them, call the crisis hotline at 1-800-273-8255. If you're a veteran, press option 1. Do not make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. In exciting news coming this fall, the Misfit Nation will be going on a ruck. We'll start in St. Louis at the Arch and walk to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. It's about 242 miles. It'll be used to raise awareness for veteran issues, and we'll start the day after Thanksgiving and finish sometime the next week, hopefully. We'll be putting up a fundraiser sponsor site to try and drum up support for this walkabout. All excess donations will be given to veteran organizations actively helping our brothers and sisters. If you're a new listener, we appreciate you joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast apps. Also download the Military Broadcast Radio app to follow our family of shows there. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, _Misfit Nation. This will keep you up to date with the latest episodes of the Misfit Nation and also allow you to hear the amazing stories of our guests. Speaking of which, our next guest writes women's fiction and psychological suspense novels and is the co-host of Wild Women Who Write Take Flight podcast, a celebration of women authors supporting each other. She serves on the board of the Atlanta Writers Club and Sisters in Crime Atlanta. When not spending time with her children and grandchildren, she loves to read, walk, and travel. She lives in Georgia with her husband, 2 rescue dogs, and 2 rescued cats. So without further ado, let's welcome to the show author Katherine Nichols. How are you, Katherine?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad that we're able to connect, and you reached out to us and we were able to get you on the show and just get to chatting about how you got into writing. And you have 2 books in front of me, The Unrealiables, The Sometimes Sister. I'm sure they were fun to write, and you like to write strong female leads. If you want to give us a little background to how you got into writing, or when did you get the bug and how you started all this out?
I definitely want to do that. But first, I want to say how impressed I am with all you're doing for the veteran. Is I say a former Marine. I know Marines say once you're in, you're in. But so he was Marine in Vietnam. And I think it's very important that we not forget difficulties that so many people coming back have had and celebrate the successes of those who were able to pick up and help each other. So And helping each other's always been an important thing for me, particularly even as a kid. I was a big advocate of girls standing up for one another. I occasionally had a little fight on the playground and because somebody called one of my friends fat, and the teacher pulled me off and said, "Ladies, don't act like that." And I said, "I don't want to be a lady," because it's I could tell right then it was restrictive. So I fell into writing kind of the same way. It was just a part of me. I'd been a storyteller before I could actually write. And then when I started reading, it was like the power of books was just overwhelming. And I thought, I really want to write one of those. And I want people to read it. I didn't think about, wow, I'd like to be a super successful author, because in all honesty, that's pretty hard. And there aren't that many James Pattersons and Stephen Kings around, and I'm totally aware of that. But just the idea that someone might read something I had written and take something with them was very exciting to me. And I taught high school for many years. I really loved working with young people, and I did a lot of teaching writing there. Some of it was the more restrictive writing that I felt like, oh my gosh, we're beating the love of writing out of these kids. But I also got to teach them creative writing, and I got to teach them how to slip in some creativity and personalization and things that you normally wouldn't have thought about, like a 5-paragraph essay. You could even make it your own if you have a little bit of creativity going there. So I really loved that part. And I kept writing, but I had a family, I had a job. It was difficult to really devote time to it. So I call this my third act. I started out writing commercials and public service announcements in TV and radio. Realized that was not working out well for money or a family. That's when I went into teaching. Loved that. Got out of teaching, hopefully before the kids were saying, is she ever going to retire? And that was kind of my goal, get out before they pushed me out. And then I really got serious about writing, and I've written quite a few books. The first one to get published was The Sometime Sister. And it's interesting because I don't have a sister. Well, I have a wonderful brother, but I always thought I'd like to have a sister. Well, when I've been doing some book talks with this, some of the ladies say, it's okay that you don't have a sister. It's fine. So it's very interesting that not all sisters are just wrapped up in how much they love being sisters. But I think all sisters do have an important bond. And that was the bond I explored in The Sometime Sister, which was about two sisters. One adores her younger sister. The younger sister steals the older sister's fiance, marries him, goes to Ecuador, and the tragedy and suspense ensues from there. But it was also a book about grief, as is The Unrealiables, because people grieve in many different ways. And the way you leave a relationship with the person you lost really defines how you grieve, I think. And in The Sometime Sister, there were unresolved issues and a death. And as well in The Unreliables, which is about an author whose husband is killed. And she feels a great deal of guilt for reasons my daughter always says, don't tell so much about the book, Mom. So not going to tell you, but she feels a lot of guilt and she has to come to terms with that. There's actually a veteran in The Unreliables as well. He is down on his luck. The two of them connect, and he's older. That's not a romance, but they connect and end up having a really cool and mutually beneficial relationship. So I as I was writing that book, I did research some of the veterans issues in Atlanta and was kind of appalled by the amount of homelessness and suicides, and just, and it's a shameful part of our history, I think, and our ongoing culture that we don't bring that to light more. We make a big deal of how patriotic we are, but the truly patriotic people don't get as much attention as they deserve. So that is woven into the book. They could both be beach reads, but they've got some substance as well. And the process and getting to writing about women like that was my passion for being supportive of other women, regardless of the profession. But in writing, it's much more important than I thought it would be. I was in a critique group that was a mixed group, loved having the male point of view. Truth of the matter is, even though my books, men read them and like them, they're probably not the main ones who are going to buy them. So I realized that the women in the group, that we had a commonality. And so we branched off. We still connected with the bigger group, but we branched off, and we found that by having just the woman's point of view and saying my audience is going to be women who like science fiction, but also romance. We have a writer in there who got published with that. And since we branched off, there were 5 of us, and 4 of us are either about to be published or published. And the 5th one, we just have to prod her to finish because her work is excellent too. And I feel like our support of each other is part of that guiding force. We are very honest, but we're kind, and our suggestions help move the writing forward. So I'll give you a chance to say something.
It's outstanding. You have a lot of stuff that you've done and are doing. It seems like mentoring and helping others is really big, very big on your totem pole there. From when you were a school teacher, because you wanted to mold those minds as much as possible. At least reach one, teach one, reach one. And the same thing, you have the same modus when you have your books out. If you can touch one person with your stories in the books, that's something we say on here a lot. Is if I have a guest on here and it reaches one person and changes their life, it's a success. I don't need, like you said, the Pattersons or Stephen King's. I'm not going to have numbers like Joe Rogan on my podcast. It's just not going to happen because I didn't have 1 billion followers before I started. And if I can have one person's day change, that's a success for me. And we don't do this to become the Golden Glober or the award winners. We do it to help others and share stories. And I think you're doing a great thing.
Well, the podcast that came from the critique group was very exciting because we spread that word of women supporting each other. And it's been really fun. None of us had extensive technological experience. Oddly, I was probably the one who had the most
Wow.
because one day in high school they were saying we need somebody to man the gifted computer lab, and I said, well, I'll do that, but I had no idea how to do it. Luckily, the kids in there knew enough. They taught me and I taught them, so that was fun. But with the Wild Women Who Write take flight, we've been able to have lots of local authors. We started out with local authors, which was so much fun because they would come to my house and we would have a little wine and a little cheese and have a nice little social gathering. And then we'd interview them. We had Emily Carpenter writes Southern Gothic, and we had a wonderful memoir from one of our writers, and just all these local people that were great. Then we actually got connected to some authors that were in California and Ohio and New York City and Kentucky. We had a fun one about, it was called Bourbon is in the name of it. And it was just one of those gritty mountain suspense things that you would have never thought a woman had written this. And she's just a very lovely person, but boy, she got gritty with her characters. And so we've been able to promote helping each other while having some really great discussions about writing and other things.
It's always great to have a group that supports each other. Years ago, if you'd have a group of young ladies in a room, they'd always try to knock each other down instead of lift each other up. And I think more recently, we're seeing a lot more of the women groups or even men groups the same way, lifting each other up and not always saying, oh, that's dumb, you shouldn't do that, or you're a horrible writer. Instead, they're saying, maybe you should try this and you'll be a better writer and do things a lot better.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because that was one of my things in high school. I started out, we had a gifted program, and one of my projects was to see how gifted girls were different in interactions in classrooms and whatever than gifted boys. Well, I started a group. It was called WISE, Women in Search of Excellence. And it was young girls who were in the gifted program just because that's what my project had to be. And we just got together and they talked about the pressures and how having a group like we were starting just so they could share their pressures and anxieties, that they were very excited about that. Well, the really exciting part for me was the group kind of took off down a different road, or the same road, but with more paths leading off of it. And one of them was they wanted to encourage other girls who were not necessarily taking higher level classes. They wanted to encourage and support them to do that. And they invited those girls to come. And then pretty much it was any girl who was interested in the mission, which was to promote each other, to have a safe place to talk, and have a safe place to plan how you were going to approach difficult situations, which was just great. And we ended up mentoring some fifth grade girls at a close by elementary school. And that was so cool because the best thing I think you can do for teenagers is to build them up to the point where they feel comfortable mentoring. And then they are on their best behavior, and only the kindest and most supportive things go out to those younger students. And years after our first program with them, one of the girls from the fifth grade was now in the ninth grade. And she came and told me, she said, after you and your girls came, she said, I decided that day I was going to take advanced placement biology. And she was in all these advanced placement classes that I don't think she would have had the confidence to try. She had the brains, but she was not sure about it. So that was like sowing seeds. You often don't get to see them bloom when you teach or in your work as a podcaster. But I got to see a bloom, and it was so exciting.
You get to see the flourishing and ending of it. And I'm sure of all the students that you had in high school and after you watched them go across the stage that final time, a lot of them probably reached back to you after a while and said, thank you for everything you did, or this is where I'm at now. And I really owe this to what you did in class.
Well, that's one good thing about Facebook. We connected on Facebook and I see their children, and one of them has her doctorate and she's getting ready to run for the school board. And I mean, it's very exciting.
That's definitely a great plus for you. And in our world in military, seeing your soldier grow to be better than you were based on what you taught them, or we're just seeing them push themselves to become greater. And that's basically our goal as a leader in the military, is to make the next version of you or the next version of the person above you. And that's nothing but success for us as we see them grow. And like you said, social media has really kept us all connected now. Early in my career, that wouldn't have happened. Now I can see everyone's lives from everything they put on there. No one hides anything, and they're very proud of everything they're doing. It's an amazing thing.
And yeah, when you hear a lot of negatives about social media, and they're true, but there are some really good things that have come out from it too. And you can even tell that when someone's discouraged, a friend or a former student or somebody you barely know, and you can offer encouragement that way. So that plus is, I think, makes it worthwhile.
Definitely. On our show here, we've had a lot of authors. My first two authors on here were from New Zealand, and both of them were amazing. And so I stayed up pretty late to do those interviews so that they would be on their daytime. And I learned so much just listening to them, to the two ladies talk about their writing styles and stuff. And those two are actually friends in New Zealand, and they push each other to better things writing. And I'll send you their names after this to have them on your show. That'd be great for your show as
Great,
well.
I'd love that. Yes, thank you.
And
that would be exciting.
So I'd like to bring people like women authors for our female veterans to show that they can also write and have that edge on them, because everyone has a story they can write. It could be a true story, it could be a fictional story based on a true life, or just a nonfiction story about their actual journey through the military or through their actual life. And maybe just seeing someone else that has done it will push them to greatness and make them do it as well.
And if you have any of the female veterans, you have any of them that are starting to write or would like some writing tips, feel free to give them my information, because we might even form an online critique group to help them, and
awesome,
or help them get one of their own started.
Right. And that everyone needs a village. You can't do things on your own. For my book, I had my daughter. She was published way before me. She got published out of high school, and she was my editor for this book. So
exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It was probably
nitpicking. Yes.
Well, yes, she probably enjoyed correcting you too, but that's a lovely bonding experience too, to have worked together on something like that and then have it out there.
When she published that was our time to actually get back together again after I got out of the military. So I was gone all the time. So I missed a lot of her life growing up. But when she got published, me and her did most of the book signings together. So we'd go all around the Southeast and up to the Northeast where my parents were, and see everything and watch her flourish. It was great.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
And you should write about that experience now.
We can write about our travels. It'd be great.
Yeah, I'm always saying, what are you working on now? What are you working on now?
What's the next step? What's the next step?
Right.
So what do you see as the biggest challenges for a younger author coming up to get into the pool of authors now?
Well, the problem, of course, is how you're going to make a living while you're trying to write. My advice is carve a little piece of time to try to write something, not necessarily every day, but don't go a certain amount. Set yourself a goal. I'm not going to go more than 3 days without writing something. And it might not be a book. It might not be even a short story or a poem or anything. It might just be reflections. But if you have those, when you really have the time to fall back on it, you may have found that you have ideas. You may have found that you've almost written a short story. Just write, because that was the hardest thing for me. I really did not have the time to write on my own that often. I did sponsor a creative writing. I had a creative writing class, and we did a magazine, and they liked every now and then they wanted teachers to write something. And that really sparked me. I thought, yeah, I want to show them that I'm doing this. It's a hard process that we're kind of in it together, but keep writing. And if possible, have a writing partner where you have a little bit of accountability, not pressure, because there, you probably already, if you're trying to hold down a job or if you're in the military, a lot of people like to journal. I was never a big journaler, but as far as for me, journaling was like, oh, here's another idea for something. But really journal and get your feelings out there. It really helps a lot of people. And I would imagine if you are in the service and you're far away from family or whatever, you don't have to think that you have to sit down and page after page of beautiful prose. Just write down some feelings or write down a snapshot, a descriptive snapshot of something you saw that day. And if it's a bright moment, highlight it. And, just make writing a part of your life. And then at some point, you'll have more time to give to it.
Definitely. And that's great advice for the young writers. And I think a lot of them also, they don't even realize that they're writing now, because most of them are on social media every day writing something. They write something every day on social media, or they do a pictography, a pictograph of something that they've done that day. So they already have the creativity. You just have to expand upon it, I think.
And so many ideas for stories from those posts. I used to do listen in the hallway, and one of the assignments I gave my creative writing kids when we were talking about dialogue, I said, eavesdrop on your people, and then write down exactly what they said, because you can't really write dialogue exactly the way it comes out. And what I got one time it cracked me up so much. I was walking down the hall and this boy and girl were having a fight, and she turned to him and she said, I bet you don't even own a Porsche. I thought, oh, honey, there's so much you don't know.
Wow. Definitely doesn't.
I mean, we were kind of in not the sticks, but in almost rural East Cobb County at the time. It's not rural anymore, but I thought, no, he doesn't have a Porsche. Just look at him.
He's got an old pickup truck.
Right, if that. But yeah, it's fun. And I loved working with kids. And like I said, I think that a lot of people think they can't write. And not everybody's going to write for trying to get published, but everybody can write if that's what they want to do. It might not be the way you express yourself. We have some beautiful artists, musicians, or just people who go out and interact with each other. That could be your talent, but don't think you can't do it.
Definitely. You got to get the no out of your head and just keep pushing on the I can, and have that purpose to push forward and be persistent within yourself and get out of your own way. I think a lot of people stay in their own way too long and don't have that other person, the other voice back here telling them, do it. And they have to get that done.
And I think sometimes people are so busy, they don't stop to feel the joy that thing brings them. Because if you do that, it's going to wake something up in you. And that's the beautiful part of whether you're writing for other people, whether you're writing for yourself. You can touch yourself in a way that'll wake you up.
Definitely. I remember we were talking about an assignment earlier. My first assignment, my first year of college, I went to school in New York City, and one of our professors had us sit on the steps of the New York City Library and people watch and write a story based on what we've seen in New York City. And some of those stories are pretty amazing at the end of that day or the next day when we read them aloud to the rest of the class, because everyone's seen the same things, but a different point of view, a different perspective of what you're seeing comes out a lot better. And it's pretty funny listening to different perspectives of what people were seeing.
That's a great assignment. And I bet that was a real interesting change for you being in New York City.
I grew up there, so
so did my husband. Yeah.
I grew up in New Jersey, so it was right across the river from me. And I didn't move to the South till I came in the Army. So I've been here since basically 93.
So the South was the shocker for you.
Oh, yes, definitely. When people said hello and stuff, and didn't yell at you. It was very, very shocking. And thank you, sir. And very weird.
Yes.
Those weird manners and things that you learn down here. But that was an eye opener for me. And I've stayed down here, so that shows you something.
Well, my husband too, he likes it. Plus he said he couldn't go back to the weather. You know,
Yeah, that too.
your blood thins out down here. So,
Pretty quickly. Even though this winter has been kind of crazy, we've actually had a lot of snow here for some reason. I don't know why. Actually had snow last Friday. Not sure how that happened. But
there were snowflakes in Atlanta last Saturday. They didn't last long, but they're not supposed to be here at all in April.
yeah.
So
Showers, not snow showers.
yeah, exactly.
So you have the groups there. You're on the board of the Atlanta Writers Group, and of course the
Writers
women's
Club.
side, Writers Club. How would you start one in another city? What advice would you give to someone to start like a Writers Club somewhere else, like say Nashville or Chicago or something like that?
Well, that's interesting because the Sisters in Crime is a national organization, and you can contact Sisters in Crime, and they're not just women. They'll say sisters and misters. They whisper that one, but men are welcome in the group. But it tends to be there's a difference between the way women write crime and the way men write crime, and there's a recognition of that in the group. So if you were interested in something like that, there are national organizations that would help you, and you don't have to be published authors to be in that group or to be in the Atlanta Writers Club. The Atlanta Writers Club is local, and it's very, very well known. We do 2 conferences a year to help writers, and people come in from everywhere. And now with the Zoom factor, if you can't get to Atlanta, we for a while we were Zoom only, and now we've kept the Zoom component for people who want to participate. And our next conference is May 6th. A lot of the features might be closed out, but we do one in May and one in the first weekend of November. And I highly recommend attending. You would get lots of ideas of how to start not a chapter, because it's, like I said, it's not national, but start your own. You can also be a long distance member of the Atlanta Writers Club. It's a bargain. The dues are so low. And for the conference, you pay cafeteria style. Some conferences you only have to pay this big fee. This one, no, you can do different things like get your query letter in front of an editor or agent, or get 20 pages of your manuscript read, and there's workshops. So that would be my recommendation, to check something like that out. And then I know there are people in that organization, if there was someone who wanted a one-on-one conversation to brainstorm ideas, I'm sure. And oftentimes your local libraries might be very helpful in helping you start a small group. And then from that, you could build on, or you could all go to a conference. Nashville has a fun one called Killer Nashville, and it's Sisters in Crime, basically. But it's a really good conference, and there'd be all sorts of workshops there that might help you. So I would say if anybody's interested, they can like I said, I don't mind talking or helping them connect with somebody or try some conferences.
Awesome. And how does someone get in contact with you to either find your book or have you come on their show?
Well, I don't have a problem with people having my email. It's Nichols, Nichols, 75@gmail.com. I think you've got my website and my Facebook, so I'm available for that. My books are on Amazon, the Unrealiables and the Sometimes Sister. I have a 3rd book coming out in December I'm really excited about. And I'm also working on a sequel to the Sometimes Sister. So yeah, I say I've bitten off more than I can chew, and I'm going to have my 5th grandchild in June. It's my baby, her first baby. So I'll probably be a little caught up there, but it's almost all of it is energizing. I think that's the secret. Don't do something that drags you down. And I should learn to say no, but now it's all about yes.
Yes,
So,
I
no,
got it.
but I'd be more than happy to help point people in a direction to start their own, to be their own advocates, and to start their own women's support groups or men and women.
Awesome. Thanks again for agreeing to come on or reaching out to me and getting us connected and coming on here and sharing your story with the Misfit Nation And we enjoy creativity, and of course we're closet writers, I guess, too, since we have one book ready and another one in the shoot.
Very exciting.
Good luck on your third book coming out, and of course the sequel, and of course your youngest having your fifth grandchild. That's a very exciting time for you.
Yes, exciting.
Good luck to you and your family on that. And again, thanks for being on.
Thank you so much for having me.